Nearly $500,000 appears on the courtroom screen, and for Mallerie, the number feels like months of fear finally taking physical form. She does not look at the chart for long. Her eyes move straight toward Rasit. This is the moment she has been waiting for, because the money they once treated as part of their future now appears scattered across accounts she says she never knew existed. Rasit does not look scared. He looks angry. And that reaction immediately complicates everything, because a frightened man might suggest panic, while an angry man suggests he believes the accusation itself is unfair. For Mallerie, this was never only about money. When they started putting funds into a shared business plan, she saw those deposits as security. Every transfer represented trust. Every investment felt tied to the life they were supposed to build together. She believed they were taking risks as a couple, making decisions as partners, and protecting something that belonged to both of them. Rasit looked at the same money differently. To him, business funds were never supposed to sit still. Money had to move through deals, accounts, investments, and opportunities. He believed growth required risk, and risk meant making decisions before every outcome was guaranteed. That difference between them seemed manageable when there was hope of profit. Inside this courtroom, though, the same difference now looks like the beginning of their entire collapse. Mallerie's attorney brings the transfer timeline back onto the screen. The path looks disturbing when viewed all at once. Funds leave a joint account and enter a company account. From there, money moves into another business entity. After that, part of the trail reaches an account controlled by someone Mallerie says she has never met. Her reaction changes immediately. She watches every movement on the screen as though she is seeing a private history of her own relationship being exposed in public. The issue is no longer whether Rasit invested aggressively. The issue is why money connected to both of them traveled through places Mallerie says were hidden from her. Rasit's attorney pushes back hard. He argues that the chart creates a dramatic picture without explaining what happened after each transfer. Business funds often move more than once. One transfer does not automatically mean one loss. Money sent from one company to another might still be connected to an asset, an investment, or another transaction. His position is simple. The courtroom is being shown movement, not proof that nearly 500,000 vanished. For the first time, the case stops looking simple. Mallerie has a timeline filled with transfers she never expected to see. Rasit has an explanation that makes financial sense on the surface. And somewhere between those two versions sits the truth neither side has fully established. Then the judge asks the question that changes the temperature in the room. How much of the money is recoverable right now? Rasit's attorney does not answer immediately. The silence hits Mallerie harder than any accusation. Her face tightens as she waits for a number. She has listened to explanations about investments, companies, assets, and business movement, but none of those words matter to her in this moment. She wants to hear how much of their money still exists and how much is gone. No clear figure comes. Mallerie begins to break emotionally because she reads the hesitation as confirmation. In her mind, if the money were safe, somebody should be able to say where it is. Rasit looks frustrated as his attorney explains that updated records are still being gathered. His side insists that giving an inaccurate number would create another problem. And suddenly, both interpretations seem possible. Mallerie sees silence as evidence of loss. Rasit sees silence as the result of incomplete accounting. Then his lawyer introduces something Mallerie was not expecting. Messages. They come from conversations during the period when Rasit was making aggressive investment decisions. In those exchanges, Mallerie was not demanding caution. She was encouraging risk. One message carries the idea that they needed something big and should take the chance. That evidence does not erase the unexplained transfers, but it changes Mallerie's position. She is no longer someone who knew nothing about financial risk. She knew Rasit was making bold moves. She supported at least part of that strategy when both of them believed those decisions might lead somewhere better. Rasit turns the accusation back toward her. His argument is that Mallerie believed in the plan when profits still felt possible. Now that the investments are under pressure, he believes she is describing the same decisions as betrayal. To him, she is changing the meaning of their past because the outcome no longer looks the way either of them wanted. Mallerie does not accept that comparison. Supporting risk, in her view, never meant giving up the right to know where shared money was going. She believed they were investing together. She did not believe funds would move through accounts outside her reach. The courtroom is now divided between two uncomfortable truths. Mallerie knew risk was part of the plan. Rasit still has to explain why so much money moved through places she says she never saw. Then his legal team reveals the first major finding from their financial review. Investigators have started tracing what everyone has been calling the missing $500,000, and the early records point towards something neither side expected. The full amount might not be missing at all. The first financial report changes the entire mood of the case because the number everyone feared was gone no longer looks as simple as it did on the courtroom screen. The forensic accountant starts tracing every transfer one by one, separating money that was spent from money that was moved, money still tied to assets, money reinvested into business activity, and funds that remained connected to holdings Rasit had already mentioned. For Mallerie, every new detail forces her to confront a possibility she did not expect. A large part of the $500,000 appears to still exist. That finding does not make her feel relieved. It makes her feel exposed. Mallerie came into court believing the massive transfer history proved something had been taken from their future without her knowledge. Now, the accountant is showing a different picture. Some of those movements were not losses at all. They were transfers between accounts connected to business activity. Some funds ended up attached to assets. Other amounts were reinvested. The huge number that looked so damaging at first begins shrinking once the same dollars are no longer counted every time they pass through another account. Rasit sits through this part of the testimony with a different expression than before. The anger is still there, but now there is something else behind it. Vindication. He has been saying from the beginning that the money did not simply disappear. His position was never that every decision was perfect. His argument was that Mallerie and her attorney were treating movement like theft, when business money often changes hands several times before anyone understands the final result. That distinction matters. If $100,000 moves from one joint account into a company account, then later moves into another business holding, those transfers might look like $200,000 changing hands, even though the same money was involved. The accountant explains the trail in plain terms, and the courtroom begins to see why the original chart created such a dramatic impression. Money traveling through several accounts looks suspicious when viewed without context. It does not automatically prove somebody took it. Mallerie listens without interrupting, but her face shows how hard this is to accept. The money might still be connected to business assets, yet she keeps returning to the same personal problem. Why was she unable to follow the path herself? Why did she have to sit in court and hear strangers explain where shared funds had gone? For Rasit, those are two separate issues. He believes bad communication is being treated as financial betrayal. He accepts that some decisions happen quickly, but he rejects the idea that every unfamiliar account proves wrongdoing. For a moment, his defense looks stronger than it has since the hearing began. Then the accountant reaches the part of the report that stops Rasit from enjoying that moment for long. Approximately $140,000 still does not have a clean explanation. The courtroom goes quiet again. This number is much smaller than $500,000, but suddenly it feels more dangerous because most of the easier explanations have already been removed. Assets account for one portion. Reinvestments explain another. Transfers between related accounts explain more. What remains is the amount nobody has fully connected to a clear purpose. Mallerie looks toward Rasit again, and this time her reaction is different. She is no longer asking where every dollar went. She is focused on one smaller group of transactions that refuses to fit neatly into the rest of the story. The accountant identifies several payments labeled as consulting fees. Mallerie reacts at once. She says she never approved a consultant and does not remember agreeing to payments connected to one. Rasit responds that the money was connected to legitimate business work arranged through another person. He insists the label is being treated as suspicious only because Mallerie does not recognize it. But the explanation does not settle the room. If the consulting work was legitimate, Mallerie's attorney wants to know who performed it. Rasit does not answer immediately. His lawyer tries to return attention to the accounting. The defense argues that the court should first establish what services were provided, how the payments were recorded, and whether the funds were tied to business activity before turning the hearing into something personal. The judge does not let the question disappear.
Who received the money?
Rasit shifts in his seat. The hesitation is brief, yet it changes Mallory's expression almost instantly. She has spent months wondering whether financial decisions were happening outside her reach. Now she is watching Rasit struggle with a name he should have no reason to hide if the payments were ordinary. That is the moment the case changes for her. His silence feels familiar. Mallerie starts thinking about earlier moments in their relationship when she felt information was being kept from her, moments when somebody seemed too close to Rasit, too involved in conversations, too present around decisions Mallerie believed belonged between the two of them. None of those doubts prove anything about the money, but the feeling returns before she has time to stop it. Her attorney presses harder. If the consultant performed legitimate work, there should be no difficulty identifying the person. Rasit grows irritated. He says the discussion is moving away from business records and toward personal accusations. His lawyer objects to the implication, but the judge is interested in one simple fact. A significant amount of disputed money was labeled as consulting fees. The court wants the identity connected to those payments. Rasit finally gives the name. Mallerie freezes. The anger leaves her face for a moment and turns into disbelief. She knows that name. This is not some distant business contact she has never heard of. This is someone Mallerie had already questioned before, someone she believed had become too involved in Rasit's life. The financial issue suddenly collides with an older personal suspicion she had tried to keep separate from the lawsuit. Rasit immediately sees where her mind is going, and his frustration rises because he believes she is turning a financial dispute into something else. From his perspective, the consultant's identity does not change the purpose of the payment. Work was arranged. Money was paid. The business explanation, in his view, should still be judged through records. Mallerie no longer sees it that way. For her, the question is changed. She entered court trying to understand where nearly $500,000 had gone. The accountant has now shown that much of that money was still connected to assets and investments. Her original accusation has weakened. But the remaining $140,000 has created a new problem, and the name attached to those consulting payments has made that problem personal. Mallerie is no longer only asking where the money went. She wants to know why this person received it. Mallerie now faces a problem far more painful than the original missing money claim. She is trying to separate two fears that have started moving toward each other. One fear concerns the $140,000 still lacking a clean explanation. The other concerns the person connected to those consulting payments. She knows the name, and that recognition changes the way she looks at every transfer still under review. What began as a financial dispute now touches the trust already damaged inside her relationship with Rasit. Rasit sees the situation from the opposite side. He believes Mallerie is shifting the case because the original accusation has lost strength. She entered court focused on nearly $500,000, yet the forensic review has already shown that a substantial part of those funds still exists through assets, reinvestments, and business holdings. From his perspective, the financial evidence became less damaging, so the focus suddenly moved toward his private relationships. That argument gives Rasit a stronger position than Mallerie wants to admit. She has a valid reason to question why this particular person received money from their shared business activity. Rasit has a valid reason to demand that the case stay focused on evidence rather than suspicion. Neither side has enough information yet to settle the issue, which makes the consultant's testimony far more important than anyone expected. When the consultant finally gives evidence, the explanation sounds organized at first. The payments are described as compensation for business-related work. The witness speaks about introductions, strategic help, and involvement connected to transactions Rasit was pursuing. According to this version, the money did not disappear into some unexplained personal arrangement. The payments had a commercial purpose and were tied to work performed during the same period when Rasit was aggressively pursuing investment opportunities. Rasit appears calmer as the explanation develops. For the first time since the consultant's identity became known, his position starts making sense on its own terms. If someone performed legitimate work, then paying that person does not automatically establish financial betrayal. Mallory's discomfort with the identity of the consultant does not erase the possibility that legitimate services were provided. But the hearing changes once Mallory's attorney starts examining the paperwork. The first request concerns a complete written agreement covering the disputed payments. The consultant struggles to provide one. There are records connected to parts of the business relationship, but the documentation does not neatly explain the full amount under examination. Questions move toward invoices, dates, services performed, payment timing, and proof showing who approved specific transactions. The answers become less precise as the details get narrower. That weakness matters because the court is no longer dealing with a vague accusation involving $500,000. Most of the larger amount has already received some explanation. The remaining $140,000 now carries more weight because every unresolved payment stands out against the transactions the accountant successfully traced. Mallerie watches the testimony with a different kind of attention. Earlier, she was reacting emotionally to the consultant's identity. Now she sees a financial problem separate from her personal suspicion. If the payments were ordinary business expenses, she wants records showing what was purchased, when the work happened, and why such significant sums moved, without her understanding the arrangement. The judge begins pressing the same issue. Verbal explanations are no longer enough. Rasit's side is asked to support the consulting payments with documentation showing a legitimate business purpose. The concern is not based only on the identity of the person who received the money. The concern comes from the gap between a substantial payment and incomplete records explaining exactly what was provided in return. Mallerie feels the direction of the case changing again. Only a short time earlier, she had been forced to watch the accountant weaken her original claim. Now, Rasit faces the uncomfortable part of the same process. He has an explanation, yet the available paperwork does not fully support every part of it. Rasit becomes increasingly frustrated. He believes poor record-keeping is being treated as evidence of something darker. His position remains straightforward. Missing paperwork does not prove the work never happened. Business relationships do not always produce perfect documentation, especially when decisions move quickly and different people handle different parts of transactions. That defense keeps the hearing from becoming one-sided. The incomplete contract raises serious concerns, but it does not establish that Rasit secretly took the money. The consultant's testimony provides an explanation. The missing records create doubt about how much confidence the court should place in that explanation. Then the judge makes the stakes unmistakable. Rasit's side receives a warning that supporting documentation must be produced for the disputed transfers. If those records remain missing, the financial consequences of the civil case become much more serious. The court goes further. The disputed funds are frozen while the review continues. Restrictions are placed on major financial movement, preventing the situation from changing while both sides gather records and prepare complete disclosure. Mallerie absorbs the ruling with visible relief. She does not have a final judgment. She has not proven where every disputed dollar went. Yet the court has decided that enough uncertainty exists to protect the money while the facts are examined. After months of feeling excluded from decisions involving their shared finances, she finally feels that someone has taken her concerns seriously. For the first time during the hearing, victory feels close enough for her to touch. Rasit does not share that feeling. He believes temporary restrictions are being treated emotionally as though guilt has already been established. He still maintains that the money was connected to legitimate business activity and that further records will support his explanation. Then his attorney asks to introduce another transaction uncovered during the financial review. The courtroom attention shifts away from Rasit. Mallory's expression changes before the full significance of the document even settles in. The transaction is not one Rasit authorized. Mallerie did. The amount is far smaller than the disputed consulting payments, but the timing creates an immediate credibility problem. She has spent the case demanding complete transparency from Rasit while investigators were now holding a transaction connected directly to her own decision. The relief she felt only moments earlier disappears. The financial investigation Mallerie demanded has stopped looking in only one direction. Now the same scrutiny she wanted placed on Rasit has turned toward her. Mallerie is no longer sitting in court as the person demanding answers. Now she is the one being asked to explain a financial decision she never expected to become part of the case. Rasit's attorney places the withdrawal in front of the court and walks through the timing, the amount, and the fact that Mallerie approved the transaction herself. The money involved is far smaller than the disputed consulting payments, but the effect on the hearing is immediate because her argument has always rested on trust, disclosure, and the belief that shared funds should never move without both people understanding why. Mallerie explains that the withdrawal happened during an emergency. She says the money was needed quickly, and she intended to put it back. In her mind, there is no fair comparison between what she did and the larger transfers tied to Rasit's business activity. She sees her decision as temporary and limited. The consulting payments involve far more money, several transactions, and a person whose involvement she already questioned long before the hearing. Rasit hears the explanation and sees hypocrisy. For the first time, he has something concrete supporting the argument he has been making since the beginning. He believes both of them made financial decisions alone whenever circumstances became difficult. The difference, from his point of view, is that Mallerie came into court presenting his choices as betrayal while treating her own choice as an exception. That accusation hits Mallerie hard because she refuses to accept that the situations are equal. She insists the amount matters. Her withdrawal involved thousands of dollars. The unexplained portion connected to Rasit is around $140,000. She believes scale changes the meaning of the decision because one transaction never placed their entire financial future at risk. Rasit pushes back. To him, the amount does not erase the principle. If Mallerie believed moving shared money without full discussion was wrong, then he wants to know why she gave herself permission to do the same thing when she felt pressure. He believes she is creating one standard for his decisions and another for her own. The exchange becomes heated quickly because they are no longer arguing only about numbers. They are arguing about who betrayed the relationship first, whose secrecy deserves forgiveness, and whose choices deserve suspicion. Mallerie raises her voice as she tries to separate an emergency withdrawal from business payments she says were kept outside her view. Rasit responds with growing frustration because he believes every explanation she gives for herself is the same kind of explanation she refuses to accept from him. The judge stops the argument before the hearing turns into another personal fight. The court wants disclosure, not competing speeches about betrayal. That instruction changes the mood because both Mallerie and Rasit are forced back toward the records. Neither person gets to decide whose reasons sounded more sympathetic. Each transaction has to be explained through dates, documents, account histories, and evidence showing where the money went. The case now looks very different from the way it looked on the first day. Mallerie originally appeared to be the partner standing outside the financial system, trying to understand how money tied to their future traveled through accounts she did not know. Rasit appeared to be the person making major decisions while she struggled to follow behind him. That picture is no longer complete. The new evidence shows a relationship where financial trust had already started breaking in both directions. Rasit made aggressive moves that Mallerie did not fully understand. Mallerie made a withdrawal she did not bring forward when she first accused him of moving shared funds without proper discussion. The amounts are different, the reasons are different, and the consequences are different, but both choices now sit inside the same courtroom record. Still, one issue refuses to disappear. The unexplained $140,000 is still there. Rasit's legal team begins producing more documents connected to the consulting payments. Some of those records start matching work described earlier. Certain transactions line up with services, introductions, and business activity connected to the period under examination. Those records give Rasit part of the support he has been demanding. For Mallerie, though, the new paperwork does not erase the gaps. Several transfers still remain harder to follow. Some records explain where money moved but do not fully answer why a specific amount was paid. Other documents support business activity without covering every payment Mallerie is questioning. Her attorney keeps returning to those missing connections. Rasit's side points to the assets still tied to the original investments. Mallerie's side points to the money whose purpose remains unclear. Neither argument closes the case. That uncertainty becomes more important than either person's anger because the hearing has moved beyond the original accusation. The question is no longer whether nearly $500,000 disappeared. The forensic review has already weakened that claim. The issue now concerns incomplete disclosure, unexplained transactions, and whether either person understood the financial decisions being made in their shared name. The judge orders both of them to provide full financial records. Mallerie has to disclose everything connected to her withdrawal and any other transaction involving shared funds. Rasit has to produce the remaining documentation tied to the consulting payments and the business accounts. Restrictions on major assets stay in place while the review continues. Neither person is allowed to move significant funds while questions remain unresolved. There is no victory for either side. Outside the courtroom, Mallerie looks less focused on winning than she did before. The lawsuit started with money, but the hearing has forced her to confront something she finds harder to measure. Even if every dollar eventually receives an explanation, she no longer knows what those explanations would repair. She has now heard about accounts she did not control, payments involving someone she already distrusted, and financial decisions she never understood while they were happening. For her, the relationship is becoming harder to separate from the case. Rasit sees the same hearing through a completely different lens. He believes Mallerie came to court expecting the evidence to identify one guilty person. Instead, the investigation has exposed decisions on both sides. He still believes her original accusation made his business choices look more sinister than the records support. Neither of them leaves feeling cleared. Neither leaves feeling safe. Then Mallerie's attorney receives new banking information. At first, the update appears to be another account record connected to the financial review. But this account was never included in the earlier disclosures. Mallerie did not know it existed. The account has 2 registered owners. Rasit's name is there. Then Mallerie's attorney looks at the second name, and the entire dispute changes again. Rasit is not the only owner. The newly located account becomes the most dangerous piece of evidence in the case because it appears after both sides have already been ordered to disclose everything. Mallerie expects to see Rasit's name connected to it, and she does. What stops her is the second owner. This account does not belong to Rasit alone. 2 people are legally connected to it, and suddenly the courtroom has another problem nobody dealt with during the first financial review. For Mallerie, the existence of the account matters almost as much as the money inside it. She has spent the entire case asking why funds moved through places she did not understand. Now another account has surfaced after repeated demands for complete disclosure. Her attention moves from the balance to the ownership records because she wants to know who controlled the money, who knew about the account, and why this information did not appear earlier. Rasit faces a different problem. Until this point, he has argued that complicated transfers were being presented as evidence of missing money. Much of the original $500,000 supported part of his defense because the forensic accountant traced substantial funds back to assets, reinvestments, and existing business holdings. This new account does not erase those findings. Yet its late appearance gives Mallerie another reason to question how complete Rasit's financial explanations have been. The account also raises another possibility. Some portion of the disputed $140,000 might connect to it. If so, the money might not have vanished. But that would create a new question. Why was an account connected to disputed funds missing from the earlier disclosures? The court returns to the records. Everything that looked separate earlier now matters together. Mallerie's messages encouraging aggressive investment return to the discussion because they show she knew Rasit was taking major financial risks. She cannot present herself as someone who expected every dollar to stay untouched. Rasit points back to those messages because he believes they prove Mallerie supported the strategy while both of them expected the investments to succeed. But Mallerie's response stays consistent. Agreeing to risk does not mean agreeing to secrecy. She believed money would be invested through arrangements they both understood. Finding accounts she never knew about is the reason she still believes something deeper went wrong. Then Rasit's missing documentation comes back into focus. Some consulting payments now match services and business activity. Other payments still lack complete records. That mixed result protects Rasit from the strongest accusation while keeping pressure on him. The court has evidence supporting legitimate business movement, yet gaps remain in the trail. The consultant's role stays important for the same reason. Testimony was given. Business work was described. Some records support parts of that explanation. Still, The documentation never became complete enough to remove every concern tied to the disputed amount. Mallerie's own withdrawal also returns. She cannot demand perfect disclosure from Rasit while pretending her transaction never happened. Her emergency explanation gives context, but it does not change the fact that she moved shared money without bringing the decision forward when the lawsuit began. That leaves the judge with a case far messier than the one Mallerie first presented. There is no simple story where one person knew everything and the other knew nothing. Rasit made financial moves Mallerie did not fully understand. Mallerie approved a withdrawal Rasit later used to challenge her credibility. Some of the money first described as missing still exists through assets. Some disputed transfers have supporting records. Others remain incomplete. And now there is an undisclosed account carrying two owners. The judge's concern shifts away from who sounds more betrayed. The court wants honesty. Rasit has to explain why the financial trail was fragmented and why complete records did not appear when disclosure first began. His argument about business complexity only goes so far if accounts connected to the review keep appearing later. Mallerie has her own explanation to give. Her withdrawal was smaller, but withholding it from the original picture damaged the clean division she tried to draw between her conduct and Rasit's conduct. The account history receives close attention because ownership alone does not answer what happened to the disputed money. The court still has to separate control from access, business movement from personal use, and missing paperwork from deliberate concealment. That distinction keeps the final phase from becoming an easy victory for either side. Mallerie looks across the courtroom at Rasit, but the fight no longer seems centered on 500,000. The number brought them here. The records kept them here. What sits between them now is harder to repair.
Trust.
Mallerie believed she understood the financial future they were building. Rasit believed she understood the risks behind his decisions. Both of them now realized they were operating with different versions of the same relationship. Mallerie sees undisclosed accounts and incomplete explanations. Rasit sees investments that became accusations once the expected returns failed to appear. Mallerie sees a partner who moved money beyond her reach. Rasit sees a partner who encouraged risk, made a separate withdrawal of her own, then demanded standards she did not fully follow herself. The judge refuses to decide the entire dispute before the remaining records are produced. Restrictions on major assets stay in place. Both sides receive orders requiring full financial disclosure. Rasit must provide every remaining document tied to the consulting payments, business transfers, and accounts under review. Mallerie must provide complete information connected to her own transaction and any other shared funds she controlled. No final civil victory is handed to either person. Mallerie leaves the hearing with a feeling she did not have when the case started. Recovering money no longer seems enough. Even if accountants eventually trace every dollar, she does not know whether another explanation fixes what happened between them. One more account she did not know about feels like one more part of their shared life she never fully understood. Rasit leaves with his own frustration. The original accusation suggested nearly $500,000 had disappeared. The financial review showed a substantial part of that money still tied to business activity and assets. He believes that matters. He also believes Mallerie's withdrawal proved she made private financial decisions too. But the final record refuses to clear him completely. The account exists. It was not part of the earlier disclosure. Rasit is one owner, and there is another owner attached to the same account. That final fact leaves the relationship in a place neither money nor paperwork easily repairs. Mallerie came to court asking where their money went. By the end, the harder question is how much either of them truly knew about the financial life they claimed to share. So, who crossed the bigger line here? Was Rasit wrong for moving shared money through accounts Mallerie could not access, or did Mallerie weaken her own case when her undisclosed withdrawal came to light? Tell me which side you believe has the stronger argument and why.